The desert had no mercy left to give. It stretched in all directions, a great, broken sea of red and ochre where the wind whispered like ghosts between stones. The horizon burned the color of rust. A man rode through it alone, one hand pressed against his ribs where an old wound still ached like a buried sin. His name was John Hawthorne, a soldier once. Union blue turned dust brown. The war had ended 2 years ago, but no one had told his heart. He rode west not for glory, not for gold, but to outdistance memory. The land offered little comfort. Only the rhythm of his horse's hooves and the creak of worn leather. That and the silence that filled every mile. He hadn't spoken to another soul in weeks. Didn't plan to. Words felt like lies out here. Then, one evening, as the sky began to bruise into violet and fire, he smelled smoke. Not campfire smoke. Acrid, human, burned hair and ruin. He followed it over the ridge, rifle loose in his hand. Below lay the blackened remains of a Navajo camp. Teepees collapsed and scattered. Ash drifted like snow over broken pots and bodies. Buzzards wheeled low, their shadows passing like dark prayers. He dismounted slowly, scanning the ruin. There were no survivors. No one. A shape moved near the edge of the creek, small, half hidden beneath a blanket. John approached, rifle steady. It was a girl. Navajo. Maybe 17. Her leg was bloodied, an arrow snapped off near the knee. She looked up when his boots crunched the ash, eyes wide, wild, too tired to flinch. For a long time, they only stared at each other, predator and prey, though neither had the strength to play their part. Then she whispered something in her language, low, broken, full of wind. John didn't understand, but the sound of it, the sheer human sound, made him lower the rifle. He crouched beside her. "You're hurt." She didn't respond. Her lips were cracked, her skin streaked with soot and blood. He looked toward the horizon, soldiers' tracks in the dirt, hoof prints leading north. A cavalry raid, maybe. He'd seen their kind before. Drunken vengeance, thinly veiled as justice. John felt something twist in his gut. The same sickness he'd felt in Tennessee, after Shiloh, when the world stopped pretending killing was righteous. He tore a strip from his shirt, soaked it from his canteen, and began cleaning the wound. The girl hissed, tried to pull away. "Easy," he muttered. "Ain't here to hurt you." Her eyes darted to his belt. The revolver, the knife, the blue coat faded nearly gray. She didn't believe him. He couldn't blame her. That night he built a small fire in a hollow between the rocks. The stars came out cold and bright, sharp as flint. The girl lay wrapped in his spare blanket, feverish and silent. He sat across from her, rifle across his knees, watching the flames twist and dance. He didn't know why he'd stayed. He could have left her, God knows most men would. But something in her stillness unsettled him. Not fear, not weakness, just endurance. Like the land itself. When she finally spoke, her voice was faint. "You soldier." He blinked. Her English was rough, but clear enough. He said, "You kill Navajo?" He stared into the fire. No, a long silence. Then, "Soldiers kill my people." He nodded. "Ain't right." "You soldier." He looked up at her. Her eyes glimmered dark in the firelight. Not accusing, not pleading. Just truth. "Yeah," he said finally. "I was." She turned her face away, as if that answered everything. John sighed, ran a hand through his hair. "Name's John," he offered. No answer. After a while, he said softly, "You got one?" She hesitated. "Atsa." He repeated it, careful on his tongue. "Atsa." She glanced at him once, then closed her eyes. John leaned back against a rock, staring up at the stars. He thought of his unit, the 14th Illinois Cavalry, now scattered bones and ghosts across half the continent. He thought of the burning farms, the screams, the endless rain of Shiloh. And he thought of this girl, this last ember of a dying camp, breathing beside his fire. He didn't pray anymore, but for the first time in years, he almost wanted to. By dawn, her fever had broken. She woke to the sound of boots moving near the creek. John was kneeling, refilling the canteen. His silhouette was cut against the sunrise, tall, tired, marked by dust and purpose. When he noticed her watching, he gave a small nod. Need to move soon. There'll be riders following that smoke. She sat up slowly, grimacing as pain shot through her leg. You leave me? He looked at her dead steady. Ain't gonna. She frowned, wary. What? He didn't answer. Maybe he didn't know. He packed his saddlebag, loaded his rifle, and helped her to her feet. She swayed but didn't fall. The horse snorted as he lifted her onto the saddle. She resisted at first, then relented. Pride gave way to exhaustion. He walked beside the horse, leading it south toward the mesas, the girl gripping the pommel with both hands, her dark hair blowing wild in the wind. They traveled in silence. Only the desert spoke, whispering through the brush, rattling the dry bones of the world. By midday, they reached a canyon carved deep and narrow. John led her into the shade, where a trickle of water ran between stones. He helped her down, filled her hands with water. She drank greedily. After a while, she said, You not like other soldiers. He smiled faintly. Ain't sure that's true. You quiet. Sad. He chuckled dryly. That makes two of us. She studied him with those unflinching eyes. You lose someone. He met her gaze. More than one. Atsa nodded, as if she already knew. Then she said something unexpected, soft, almost to herself. Sky remembers. John frowned. What's that mean? She touched her chest. When people die, Sky remember. Wind carry their voice. You listen, you hear. He looked up at the canyon walls, the strip of blue above. The wind moaned through the stones, low and mournful. Maybe she was right. Maybe that's why he could never sleep through a still night. That evening, as the sun fell behind a ridge, they made camp again. He shared what little jerky he had. She accepted, ate in silence. When the stars came out, she began to hum, a soft, low melody, strange and beautiful. He closed his eyes, listening. It wasn't a song for him. Maybe for the dead. Maybe for the land. But for the first time since the war, the ache in his chest eased. He didn't speak, just sat beside the fire, head bowed, letting the sound carry him somewhere far from guilt and flame. When she finished, she looked at him. You sleep. I watch. He shook his head. You rest. I'm used to long nights. She tilted her head. You afraid? He smiled without humor. Always. She nodded, as if that made sense. Then we same. He didn't sleep. He sat watching the fire die slow, watching her breathe in the dim light. There was something fragile about her, but also unbreakable, like a blade thin enough to cut the wind. When she shifted in her sleep, murmuring something in her language, he caught a word that sounded like home. The word hit him harder than a bullet. He turned his face away, toward the dark horizon, and whispered to no one, I don't think I got one of those anymore. The night gave no answer. Only the wind moved, carrying with it the faint smell of smoke and the ghosts of men long dead. The desert burned slower in the mornings, a pale fire spreading across the sand. John led the horse through the canyon floor, the reins loose in his hand. Beside him, Atsa rode silent, her leg bound in fresh cloth, eyes scanning the cliffs above. He had learned already that she didn't waste words. When she spoke, it mattered. When she didn't, it was because the world was saying enough on its own. They moved like two shadows through a land that didn't belong to either of them. By mid-morning, they reached an old trading post, half collapsed, abandoned years ago. Its sign swung crookedly in the wind, creaking like an old man's breath. John scouted it first, rifle ready. Nothing, just dust and spiders. He motioned her inside. You can rest here. Atsa hesitated, scanning the empty windows. Ghost place, she murmured. He half smiled. Ain't no shortage of those. She limped inside anyway. John found a corner that still held shade and helped her sit. The floorboards sighed beneath her weight. He gathered what he could, a cracked jug of rainwater, a few empty tins, a rusted kettle. Everything smelled of old tobacco and loneliness. When he handed her water, she drank slowly, never taking her eyes off him. You walk far, she said. Further than I should have. Why? He shrugged, looking for something worth finding. She tilted her head, studying him. You fine. He met her gaze. Maybe, for a heartbeat. She held it, then looked away. They stayed through the heat of the day. John worked in silence, cleaning his rifle, cutting fresh bandages. Atsa slept, the faint rise and fall of her chest the only sign she was still tethered to this world. When she woke, the light had turned amber. He sat by the doorway, carving something into a strip of mesquite wood. "What you make?" she asked. He turned it in his hands, a small figure, rough but shaped like a bird mid-flight. "A gift," he said. "For who?" He hesitated, then set the carving down gently. "For someone I buried." She looked at him, sensing the weight behind the words. "Wife." He shook his head. "Brother." She nodded once, an acknowledgement, not pity. "You fight with him?" Beside him, Shiloh, Antietam, all the pretty names they give to hell. "Dead now." He nodded. "Left me the quiet." Atsa ran her fingers over the carving. "Bird wants to fly," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "Don't we all?" That night, the wind turned cold. The stars came out in sheets, so close they looked like they could burn your fingertips. John sat near the doorway, cleaning his revolver by firelight. Atsa wrapped herself in a blanket and watched the flames with eyes that saw through centuries. Finally, she said, "My mother died when I was small. Soldiers take me, my sister. We run. They find us near river. I live. She don't." Her voice was calm, but her hands shook slightly beneath the cloth. John didn't look at her. "I'm sorry." She said nothing for a long time. Then, "You kill before?" He froze. The question came quiet, but it hit like a rifle crack. "Yes," he said finally. "Plenty. You hate it." He stared into the fire. "Sometimes. Other times, I don't feel nothing at all." "That worse," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "I reckon it is." The wind moaned through the gaps in the wood, sounding almost like voices. "You think Sky remember you?" she asked. He looked up. "Sky remembers everything." She studied him for a moment. "Then maybe Sky send you to me." He frowned slightly. "Why's that?" Her gaze didn't waver. "To remember different." He didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. But her words stayed, heavy as the stars. In the following days, they traveled west, following a trail that wound through red canyons and brittle sage. The heat shimmered off the rocks like invisible fire. Atsa's strength returned slowly. She learned to ride without leaning, to smile without hiding it. John caught himself watching her too often, not like a man hungry, but like one afraid to blink and lose something fragile. He told himself it was duty, protection, debt to the living. But that was a lie, and he knew it. On the fourth day, they came upon a river, narrow, muddy, but alive. Atsa went to it first, kneeling to touch the water. "Feels old," she said. He crouched beside her. "All rivers are." She splashed a little, smiling. It was the first time he'd seen her smile in full, teeth white against the dusk, eyes bright as a child's. He caught himself smiling back before looking away. "You laugh," she teased softly. "You forget how?" "Maybe," he said. "Maybe you reminded me." They camped under a stand of cottonwoods. The night air was cool, the fire small but steady. John dozed against a tree, rifle across his lap. Atsa sat awake, humming the same song he'd heard before, low, mournful, but beautiful in its loneliness. When she stopped, she said quietly, "You still dream of war." He opened his eyes. "What makes you say that?" "You talk when you sleep." He sighed. "What did I say?" "Run." He nodded slowly. "Sound about right." She leaned her head back, watching the stars through the branches. "Maybe now you stop." Hard to stop running from what's inside. She looked at him, eyes soft. "Then maybe you walk with it." He didn't answer, but the simplicity of it, the way she said it, like it was truth and not comfort, settled in his chest like warmth. By dawn, clouds gathered to the east. A storm was coming, rare, fierce, promising both blessing and ruin. They rode through the morning light, the sky darkening above. By noon, the rain came in hard sheets, soaking the world in silver. They found shelter in a cave cut into the canyon wall. Inside, the sound of rain echoed like drumming. The earth smelled clean again. John built a small fire. Atsa sat across from him, wringing water from her hair. For a long time, neither spoke. The rain filled the silence between them, like the world breathing. Finally, he said, "When this is over, when you're strong, I'll take you north. There's land safe enough. Folks will take you in." She looked at him steadily. "You go too." He hesitated. "Don't reckon I belong anywhere." Her gaze didn't leave his. "You belong where you try." He almost laughed, but something in her tone stopped him. She meant it. He looked into the fire instead. "You ever think about what comes next?" She thought for a moment. "Yes. I live. You live. Maybe that's enough." He nodded. "Maybe it is." The fire crackled softly. The rain softened to a whisper. Atsa lay down near the flames, her breathing slow, even. John watched her until his eyes grew heavy. For the first time in years, he dreamed, not of war, but of rivers, wind, and a bird carved from mesquite wood, flying into the sun. When he woke, dawn light filtered through the cave mouth. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed and new. Atsa was gone. He shot to his feet, heart pounding, scanning the canyon. Her footprints led toward the riverbank. He followed them fast, and found her kneeling beside the water, holding something in her hands. The small wooden bird. She turned as he approached, eyes bright. "You make fly." He exhaled in relief. "You scared me half to death." She smiled faintly. "I find River. River remember too." He crouched beside her, watching the current carry leaves and light. "Maybe we both oughta start remembering different," he said. She nodded. "Then we start now." The sky above them stretched wide and endless, blue as forgiveness, cruel as truth. They sat there until the sun climbed high, saying nothing. Two lost souls caught in the same current, learning that sometimes what's broken doesn't need mending. It just needs time to breathe. The first bullet came with the sunrise. It split the stillness with a flat crack that sent a hawk wheeling from the cliffs. John didn't think. He shoved Atsa down behind a fallen log as the second shot kicked dust beside her cheek. "Stay low," he barked. The echo died in the canyon. Then came the faint ring of spurs, the grind of boots on rock. Someone was coming. More than one. Atsa's eyes went wide. "Soldiers." John listened, then cursed under his breath. No, worse. He crawled to the edge of the outcrop, peering down into the scrub valley below. 3 riders. Broad hats, long rifles. The kind of men who hunted for coin, not cause. Bounty hunters. And he knew who they were hunting. Not her. Him. The world had a way of remembering the wrong things. They'd found his trail, same as always. Whispers from old towns, a wanted sheet passed across whiskey bars. John Markham. Desertion. Theft. Murder of a commanding officer. All half true, which made them enough. He checked his revolver. 5 rounds left. The rifle. 1 in the chamber, 2 in the belt. Atsa watched him, reading the truth in his face. "They come for you." He didn't answer, just handed her the canteen. "You know how to run?" Her gaze hardened. "You know how to live?" It hit him, the same way her words always did, clean through the ribs. He wanted to tell her this wasn't her fight, that she'd done enough running for one lifetime. But there was no time. He chambered the rifle, breath steadying. "When I say go, you follow the river north. Don't stop till the sun's overhead." "And you?" she asked. "I'll buy you the time." The hunters rode closer, 1 to flank, 2 to front. Experienced, patient, the kind who took pride in slow killing. John steadied his aim on the nearest rider, a man with a red bandana and a silver tooth that flashed in the light. He squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked the air like thunder. The rider's body jerked, toppled sideways, hit the dirt hard. The others ducked, shouting, returning fire. Bullets whined through the scrub. Atsa clutched the wooden bird tight in her fist, praying without words. John fired again. Another miss, but close enough to send them scrambling for cover. The canyon turned to smoke and echo and fury. Then he felt it, the click of the empty chamber. His last round spent. "Go," he shouted. But she didn't move. Instead, she grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the back slope. "This way." He followed because she didn't ask. She commanded. The kind of authority that came from having nothing left to lose. They ran through the narrow ravine, feet sliding over loose rock, breath tearing at their throats. Shots cracked behind them, ricocheting off stone. The morning light was red, not from fire, but from the dust lifting off the canyon floor, burning in the sun. They reached the ridge where the river forked below, thin, winding like a vein of glass. Atsa stopped suddenly, turned back. "You can't fight all," she said. "You die for nothing." "Not for nothing," he rasped. Then the third bullet found him. It hit high in the shoulder, spinning him halfway around. He fell hard, gasping, blood already soaking through his shirt. Atsa caught him before he hit the ground. "John, keep moving," she tore his sleeve, pressing cloth to the wound. No, the riders were coming. Voices closer, boots and laughter. The kind of men who enjoyed killing slow. He tried to push her away, but her hands were steady. "I not leave," she said through clenched teeth. "I not run again." He looked at her, really looked, and saw the same fire that had survived slaughter, captivity, and loss. Something inside him gave way. Not pain, but a kind of surrender he hadn't known was possible. "Then we ended together," he said. They dragged themselves to a ledge over the river. Below, a narrow path wound through rock and sage, the perfect choke point. John reloaded what he could. 2 bullets scavenged from his belt. Atsa took his knife, gripping it like it was part of her hand. The riders came into view, silhouettes against the rising sun. 3 of them again, 1 dead, 2 alive, and 1 more following the trail of blood like a hound. Their leader called out, voice echoing off the canyon walls. "Markham, we could take you warm or cold. But I'll tell you plain, cold's easier on the smell." John steadied his rifle against the stone, sight trained on the voice. "You ain't got the aim for it," he shouted back. "Never did." The man laughed. "Still got the tongue, though. Shame it'll rot in the dust. Then come take it." And they did. The first rider charged up the slope, firing wild. John dropped him clean with 1 shot, square through the chest. The man tumbled back, his rifle clattering off rock. The second tried to flank, smart, but not smart enough. Atsa threw a stone to draw his fire, then lunged when he turned. The knife found his arm deep. He howled, swinging wildly, catching her shoulder with the butt of his gun. She fell back, gasping, but John was already moving, blood loss forgotten. He took the last bullet and made it count. The man dropped beside her, still. Silence again, except for their breathing. Then, slow applause. The leader stepped from behind a boulder, hat low, eyes glinting mean. He wasn't young, maybe 50, but there was steel in his smile. "Well, hell," he said. "Didn't think you had that kind of fight left in you, Markham." John recognized the voice. "Captain Hensley," he said, the name tasting like old blood. He'd ridden under that man once, before the war ended, before the law came looking. Hensley tipped his hat. "Thought you'd be dead by now. Been working on it. Looks like you found yourself a companion." He nodded toward Atsa. "Pretty thing. She the reason you went soft?" John's jaw tightened. "You don't talk about her. Or what? You'll kill me?" Hensley smirked. "Son, you already tried that once." He raised his revolver. The moment froze, wind shifting, sunlight catching the gunmetal. John couldn't lift his own weapon. Not fast enough. Not this time. Then a sound broke the stillness. Click. Hensley blinked down at his pistol. Misfire. John didn't think. He lunged. They collided in a storm of fists and dust, rolling down the slope. The revolver fired once into the dirt, then vanished into the brush. John's wounded arm screamed, but rage kept him upright. Hensley swung hard, catching him across the jaw. "You're done, soldier," he spat. "Ain't no redemption for men like you." John caught the next punch, twisting the captain's wrist till the bone cracked. "Maybe not," he hissed, "but there's peace." Then he drove Hensley's own knife up beneath his ribs. The old man gasped, eyes wide, surprise, not fear, before the strength went out of him. He slid to the ground, blood dark on the sand. John staggered back, trembling, breath broken. Atsa was there, hands on his face, her eyes full of light and sorrow all at once. "It over," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, it never is." She touched his chest, Not the wound, but the heart beneath. Then you stop it here. He looked down at her, rain mixing with blood, dawn flaring gold behind her. For a moment, the whole desert seemed to hold its breath. He wanted to say something, anything, but all that came out was a whisper. You saved me. She smiled faintly. We save each other. By the time the sun cleared the ridge, the river below was already running red. The smoke had drifted east, and the canyon had gone quiet again. That heavy, endless quiet only the desert knows. John sat on a rock, half conscious, Atsa binding his wound tight with torn cloth. When she finished, she leaned back, studying him. You still bleed. But maybe now not inside. He smiled weakly. Don't feel like it. Good, she said. Means you live. They buried Hensley where he fell. Not out of kindness, but because the desert demanded it. John carved a small cross into the rock, though he wasn't sure who it was for. When he turned, Atsa was already walking toward the river, her figure bright against the light. He followed her, slower this time, and together they stood watching the current. It caught the sunlight, gold, fierce, alive. The same river that had carried death now shimmered like a promise. John took the wooden bird from his coat and handed it to her. Guess it's yours now. She turned it in her hands, smiling softly. No, it's yours. You make fly. He looked at it. The little thing, rough and uneven, then tossed it into the river. It spun, caught by the current, carried away. Maybe to the sea, maybe to nowhere. Didn't matter. It was flying. That night, they built a fire by the water. No words, no need. Above them, the stars spread wide and merciless, but beautiful all the same. He reached for her hand once, just to feel it, warm, real, alive. The fire crackled, soft and slow. And as the wind shifted, he thought he heard the faintest sound, not of ghosts, but of wings. The desert stretched endless, pale gold and merciless. They had been walking for days, John with one arm bound tight against his chest, Atsa steady beside him, her eyes fixed on the horizon where heat and sky blurred into one long dream. The river was gone now. What remained was dust and thirst. John's steps grew slower with each mile. The wound in his shoulder had turned black around the edges. Fever burned in him, sometimes so hot he could see faces in the sand, ghosts of the men he'd buried, the wars he'd run from, the brothers he'd left behind. But every time he faltered, he felt her hand at his back. Quiet, firm, reminding him that life, even when it hurt, was still worth the carrying. By the third night, they found shelter beneath a crumbling arch of rock. The wind howled through it like an organ in some forsaken church. Atsa gathered twigs, coaxed a flame from a single spark. John sat near it, shivering despite the heat. You should sleep, he said. I'll listen, she replied. To what? She tilted her head. The world. It still move. He smiled faintly. Maybe it's waiting for us to stop. She turned to him, eyes glinting in the firelight. You still think death is end? I used to think it was the only thing left. And now? He looked at her for a long moment. Now I think maybe there's something worse. What? Not living while you're here. Atsa smiled softly, the kind of smile that wasn't joy but peace. Then live. He woke before dawn. The fever had broken sometime in the night, leaving his body hollow but clear. The stars were still out, faint, trembling things on the edge of morning. Atsa sat by the fire, watching him. You dream again? She asked. He nodded. This time, it wasn't war. What you see? He took a moment before answering. A house. Small one. By water. Someone singing. She tilted her head. Maybe memory. Maybe wish. She reached into her satchel and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. She handed it to him. He unwrapped it slowly, the small wooden bird. You kept it, he said, voice rough. It come back, she said simply. River bring it near camp while you sleep. Maybe it not done flying. He held it in his palm, the carving smooth from her touch. For the first time in years, his chest didn't feel like an open wound. He met her gaze. I reckon neither are we. By mid-morning, the sun rose angry and bright. They climbed the last ridge before the salt flats began, a wide white sea of nothing stretching to the edge of sight. Halfway across, John stumbled. His vision dimmed. Atsa caught him, easing him to his knees. "No," she whispered. "Not yet." He looked up at her, blinking through the glare. "It's all right," he said quietly. "You go on." "No." Her voice cracked like thunder in the still air. "We finished together." He smiled weakly. "You're stubborn. You teach me." He laughed, a dry, broken sound but real. The light behind her was blinding now, her face haloed by it, her hair whipping in the wind. "Listen," he said. "There's a town maybe half a day's ride east. You'll find water there. Tell them your name's Atsa Markham. Tell them you're free." Her eyes shimmered. "You come too." "I will," he whispered. "Just not the same way." She shook her head violently, tears mixing with dust. "No." "You promise." He reached up, touched her cheek with a trembling hand. "I already did." The desert fell silent again. Atsa stayed with him until the sun began to fall. She didn't cry after that. She just sat beside him, humming the old tune he'd heard the first night. When his breath slowed, she laid the wooden bird on his chest and whispered something in her own tongue, a prayer, or maybe a thank you. Then she stood and turned east toward the faint line of horizon that meant life. She walked until the light swallowed her. Weeks later, a group of Navajo traders found a body at the edge of the flats. A white man, buried shallow, his hat folded over his face. Beside him lay a small carving of a bird, wings outstretched, pointed toward the rising sun. They covered him properly, sang the traveling song, and left a stone to mark the place. No one ever knew his name, but the story spread, about a soldier who carried a spirit girl across the desert and found his peace at last. Some said they still saw them sometimes at dawn, walking the river that wasn't there anymore. Two shadows against the firelight of heaven, heading home.